People at a certain age group has no idea that this took place at all.
This morning, the story behind an old documentary that has gone viral. What a black family endured after moving into the white community of Rosedale, Queens 44 years ago. Victims of racism, their refusal to leave has sparked change. Or has it?
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. In the wake of two mass shootings by gunmen filled with hate, there is an uneasiness that permeates across the national landscape. Figures show an alarming rise in anti-Semitism, racism, acts of discrimination against immigrants and other minorities. In that climate, perhaps it's understandable why a documentary produced on PBS more than 4 decades ago has gone viral on social media. With over 4 million views, it deals with one black family and racism in its rawest form in one community in Queens. James Ford has the story.
Racist chants are what white residents of Rosedale, Queens greeted their neighbors with in 1975. The Spencers they referred to were a black family headed by Tony and Glenda Spencer. The immigrants from London bought their home in the community that was at the time almost entirely white.
We are here to stay as a race, and right now as a people, we are right here, and we're going to stay here. Nobody's going to change that.
That was Glenda Spencer then. In the PBS documentary, The Way It Is, this is Glenda Spencer now.
The people at a certain age group has no idea that this took place at all.
She spoke with us about how her family's story has gotten a lot of attention lately. Perhaps you're among the 4.2 million people who viewed this recent Twitter post about the documentary, about the plight of the Spencer family that aired on PBS 43 years ago. But even now, burnt floorboards are visible under the radiator where somebody tried to set fire to the house when the Spencers bought it back then. And after they moved in, one of 2 pipe bombs planted at the home exploded.
If the second bomb had gone off, we would not be here.
It had a note attached.
The note says, "Where your firstborn first, the KKK."
After that, black activists and some whites demonstrated in support of the Spencer family. Dozens of local white residents responded with counter-protests.
They had right on, we got white on.
Police had to stay on scene for a year in eastern Queens, 1975. Fast forward 44 years, and Glenda Spencer thanks the person who repopularized the documentary.
It's excellent that he's doing that to let the people be very much aware what has taken place and is still taking place.
I really thought that people should know about it.
Sola Olasunde, an urban planning grad student, found the documentary video and tweeted sections of it.
I didn't expect it to garner this much attention.
In addition to the 4+ million views since June, it's been shared 62,000 times and gotten more than 100,000 likes, including from influencers like actor Jeffrey Wright. That's because, Olasunde says, it still resonates.
People have this sense of anxiety about people of color growing in numbers in this country, people of color coming in. And I do think it's still connected to that.
And people of color have been coming in. Rosedale, since the 70s racial tension, is now 80% black, 5% white, and 15% other ethnic groups. With the change, they've brought household income to 33% above the citywide average, and home values are 50% higher than the city average for detached homes. 2 of every 5 residents here now, like the Spencers, are immigrants.
There was a Haitian gentleman living next door. Down on the Brookville Boulevard, there were people on the main road.
I just want people to, just know their history.
The segment of the documentary Olasunde posted that got the most views featured white children from the neighborhood confronting black children from a nearby neighborhood who were curious about the demonstrations.
People see New York as this, open place that, everyone just accepts each other, which is not so much the case.
Some of the black children were interviewed for the documentary.
We didn't mean to bother anybody. We had a nice saw a parade, we saw a gathering, so we went down there to see what was happening. All right. I mean, we didn't bother anybody.
a woman who was one of the children in the documentary episode we made contact with, but she's in the hospital right now. And we directly contacted some of the surviving leaders of the white protests. None of them returned our calls. But the person whose move to the neighborhood sparked outrage on what are now quiet streets was interested in comparing that time to now. Her and her husband's their home here sparked change before he passed away in the late 1990s.
The law came into effect because of what happened to me, that you can't have an organization that says you can't sell to black people.
I just wanted to post it so that people can learn from it, people can know what Rosedale was like at the time.
And even though the neighborhood has changed, the woman who helped change it has a skeptical view of race issues. She says the racism shown in Rosedale in the 1976 documentary, The Way It Is, exists in America.
Look at the title. It was, it is, and it still is.
James Ford, Pix 11 News.
And we're delighted to have Glenda Spencer with us in the studio this morning, along with Councilman Donovan Richards, who is deputy leader of the city council. His 31st district in Queens includes Rosedale. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, James Ford. Thank you all for joining us. After seeing all that you endured, why did you stay? Why did you and your late husband stay?
Well, the fact remains is that one had to stay. I mean, because my color is not going to change. I am black. And therefore, you're in a situation, unfortunately, it happened to me as a family, but it resonates all over, and it's happening today. So where would I go? Could happen anywhere, because it's part of the system and part of the thinking of too many people.
You stayed, you endured, but you made a very solid, strong statement, seeing the way the community has changed now.
Well, the community has changed, of course, because many people have moved off and moved out. But in terms of the thinking of people against us as a people, as black people, still exists. And as he said, the way it is, and it still is.
It still is. Councilman, you represent that 31st district in Rosedale, and you've seen the change over the years since that documentary was produced. How has it changed?
Well, one, as a proud Rosedale resident, you know, this neighborhood has truly transitioned into a place where we have a large enclave of black immigrant families from all over the world, technically, but primarily Haiti and Jamaica. It seems to be primarily places that a lot of immigrants migrate to Rosedale. And also, I mean, you look at Southeast Queens as a whole, but this neighborhood, on average, as the documentary pointed out, on average has a higher income than most whites around the country, more education. So this neighborhood has really become a place where people can raise their families. And you look back to 40, 50 years ago when it was much different. You know, there was a lot of segregation in the schools. You talk about integrating a community. There was a lot of pushbacks. And I'm just so happy and esteemed to be in the presence of people like Glenda, who endured this, who really laid the foundation for black families to be successful.
Catalyst for change.
Yeah.
James, you did a lot of research for that report. Why do you feel that this documentary of 4 decades ago is resonating over 4 million views? Why?
Yeah, actually, I think Ms. Spencer spoke to it to some extent, because a lot of these tensions are at the surface now, nationally, and I think it resonates a lot with people in New York. I mean, look, those and by the way, it was 4.2 million views when we first did this story a couple weeks ago, and now that number has increased. Those are viewers not just from our area, but nationwide, because there is such a tension regarding race and hatred. I think this instance of race and hatred from 43 years ago really does strike a chord today.
Now, I think you deliver a very important message by staying, because how it has changed. You now have 80% black there. Property values are higher than the average. And I think that's a message that has to resonate out there.
Well, it does, because of the time. We're talking 40 years later. Of course, the houses are much more expensive today. So, but in terms of the thinking of too many people, and what is happening right now is that racism is still here. Discrimination still exists within the schooling system, within the housing system, within the jobs. It's part of the fabric, unfortunately, of this country.
You feel the current political climate contributes to this?
Of course. I mean, it's brought it out in the open. It has made it, I wouldn't say not more obvious, but it allows people to believe they can do what they're doing and get away. And it has shown over the period of time that too many things have happened and people got away for committing crimes. Even in my situation, the gentleman who made the bomb, the pipe bomb, he was not prosecuted. Nothing happened. And the man who committed the crime by placing the bomb, he got away with that as well because he got a jury of his peers and he had the people there. So the system is really part of a system that exists in this country at all different levels, some very subtle, some very direct, but it is here because this is what America is about.
And you don't feel it has changed. I have to take a break. We'll continue the discussion. Stay with us as Pix 11 News Close-Up continues. Back now with Glenda Spencer, Councilman Donovan Richards, and my colleague James Ford. Let's talk about the mood in Rosedale. How has the racial characterization in Rosedale changed in recent years?
Well, listen, 80% black population here now. You know, these are individuals who are driving our city, civil service workers, people who contribute to the everyday fabric of New York City. But we've come a very long way, you know. You look at the rhetoric that's coming down from Washington, D.C. at the moment. You look at the rise of hate crimes in New York City, and that's why a documentary like this is taking off in the way it is, because all of these feelings that people have kept bubbled up inside, we are hearing every day on a federal and national level from white supremacists that folks don't belong here. But we've shown that this largely immigrant community that people say don't belong here are the reason that New York City is what it is.
And Glenda, you are credited with really actually for the change because you stood up against the haters. You wouldn't be intimidated. You weren't forced to leave. You weren't told to go back, and you stayed there. And you're credited. You're a heroine.
No, I don't consider myself one. I think it's a reality of what took place and what is still happening. I did it because of the schooling and coming from United Kingdom because my children were born there. And I wanted the school within the community that they don't have to be bused anywhere into Forest Hills in order to get an education. So the fact remains is that as an individual, I'm alive, but many of us are not here because of racism. And right now we have, to me, slavery, because to me that is embedded in the private public jails. You know, discrimination is all over. So it exists and is part of what this country is about, unfortunately.
There's been change, but there's need for more
change. There is change, yes, but it comes at all. There's very subtle changes. But when you look at what's taking place today, because you've been killed because you are black, you haven't committed a crime, and we have the different laws. England was the sus law. Today is the stop and frisk law, which means that you're having young people being in jail for marijuana, for whatever's happening. So the question is that it has changed, yes, because it's not as open as this happened to me. They coming and they burnt and bombed. And let's be realistic, I was burnt and bombed, and the persons who committed the crime got away, and the one who did the pipe bomb was never charged. So when you think of the system that exists.
Are we being too lenient with some of these haters?
Oh, we need to hold them to the fullest extent. When you look at the mass shootings just this past week, right? You know, we know that white nationalism is on the rise and people have to be held accountable. And I want to add on to some things that Ms. Glenda said. You know, we still are dealing with discrimination in Rosedale. You look at the way redlining was done. You look at the way foreclosures are still impacting our communities. You look at the inequities in our education system. We don't even have gifted and talented programs. So although we've come a long way, there still are systematic barriers that are holding back our communities. But because we have resilient members like Ms. Glenda and a resilient community, we still overcome those odds.
James, you spoke to children, and they were oblivious to what happened back in the 70s. It is important for them to see documentaries and hear discussions like this.
Yes, and children resonate in a big way, right? One, this went viral because a young person decided to post a 40-plus-year-old documentary, and a lot of his followers are young people. Also, what resonated most strongly, as we say in the piece, was the part with children back then who were in the documentary, who were amazed at the violence that was shown to them. Those children are now grown-ups, right? Our intention is to do another piece that involves them 40-plus years later.
So you'll be going back to Rosedale.
Yes, sir.
We'll catch you on our broadcast.
Stop by for some coffee.
Okay, we'll do. I'll take you up on that.
In all your years in the council, you're the deputy leader. Have you affected any change for the council to improve conditions in Rosedale?
Well, yes. Well, we are addressing many of the systematic challenges that still exist in Rosedale. You know, you look at this area and you see homes. There are parts of this community that never had infrastructure put in. So every time it rains, it's flooding in people's basements. We were able to secure $2.2 billion. I was the first black to chair the Environmental Protection Committee. We also have even disparities in our precinct, right? Marijuana arrests were #1 in the 105th precinct, which is comprised of Rosedale, and which we have been able to pass laws as now the chair of the Public Safety Committee to push the NYPD to stop disproportionately arresting our young black and brown people when we know that whites smoke marijuana on average just as much as blacks, but we go to prison for it. So those are some changes. We've invested $20 million into Brookville Park just about to make sure that our parks are greener, and that increases property values. And, you know, it's been a lot of work to make sure that our schools can get better, and a lot of investment
Glenda,
there.
how did all of this impact your family?
Of course it has. I mean, it's affected the children. I mean, because there are a lot of other things that no one knows about with regarding what took place there as well, as what was not in the newspaper. So there's a lot of impact on them. You know, my brother-in-law got his neck cut, and you know, they were attacked and so forth and so on. So obviously it has affected them.
So if I ask you the final question of what message would you deliver now from what you lived through and what you see now, what would your message be?
Well, for me, I think that what is taking place is unfortunate. The message is, which is sad to say, and what Mr. Moyer's title was and still is. It is Rosedale and other communities. There's too much and a whole lot of racism and discrimination. And as he said, the way it is, and it still is today, has not changed.
Well, Glenda Spencer, such resilience, and thank you for joining us and sharing your story with us. And Donovan Richards, Councilman, thank you. And James Ford, congratulations on doing that report. You'll be back in Rosedale.
Thank you, Robert.
We're going to take a break. When we return, an uplifting story about inner city kids given an opportunity to explore their own creativity through dance. We'll be right back. All right, stand by. Many of you are familiar with the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater at Lincoln Center, but have you heard of the National Ailey Camp? Well, it's been around for 30 years, and each summer offers a refuge for inner city kids. It provides 1,000 students a safe place to be themselves and explore their own creativity through dance. Now, Nasha Thomas is director of the camp, and Jada Ann Parker is one of its lucky students. Congratulations on the fine work you're doing.
Thank you.
This is not intended to, it's not associated with dance, but the camp is for self-development. Tell us more about it.
We are teaching these young people life skills, encouraging them to be their best selves.
And how do you do that? What's your curriculum?
Well, the curriculum is ballet, modern, jazz, West African, creative communication, which is visual arts, and the foundation is personal development, and that's where we focus on conflict resolution, peer pressure, self-esteem, bullying, decision-making.
And how is that affecting you, Jada?
It's opening me up to the world more and seeing the problems that's happening and how to overcome the problems and what to do if something starts to happen, like if you're being pressured by somebody, or if somebody's making you do something, you know how to like stop and say like no, and learn how to just be more mature and stop
following others.
Yeah.
Being a leader.
Now, I read something that you accentuate the positive there. Each and every day,
Yes.
you begin the day with affirmations.
Daily
which-
affirmations. They are something that we want the campers to embody and use them to guide their lives. I will greet each day with love in my heart. I will not use the word can't to define my possibilities. I will treat others as I would like to be treated. These are important things that we all should live by, and we want our campers to live by them.
But dance is a very important factor here. Even though you're not training them for a
right.
future of dance, it helps develop them, the developmental
Discipline, concentration, focus, practice, respect, pushing yourself, coming out of your comfort zone, being challenged. These are all things that the arts do that we all need.
Is that what it's doing for you, Jada?
Yes. I was dancing before I came to Ailey Camp, and coming here has opened me up to different techniques. Like, I usually only do hip hop, but now I know how to do ballet, modern jazz, and West African, and I can use that outside of camp now, like in school and other rehearsals.
Jada is a performer.
And do you want a career in dance?
Yeah.
Ballet?
Maybe not.
She's great at West African hip hop, and she's a great all-around young person who follows direction, who works well with others, who listens to learn, and enjoys being a kid. And I think that's something that a lot of our young people are missing. So we listen.
Now you have two local locations. You have a camp in Newark, and
Yes.
you have one in the Bronx,
Yes,
right?
our partner in New York is Children's Aid, and they've been with us for 29 years.
Now this summer is over, but you're looking already, I'm sure, already planning for next summer.
2020 is our 30th anniversary, so I'm definitely looking forward to next summer.
So there are kids out there who are underserved, and they're in the inner city. How they're inspired by hearing what you and Jada are saying, and they want to get involved.
The application process will start in January, February, and they can go to our website, www.aileycampnewyork@alvinailey.org.
Let's say that again, slowly.
www.aileycampnewyork@alvinailey.org.
Okay, now, your performances, do you get to perform down at Lincoln Center?
We do. The campers do. We have a performance with students from the school and everyone in Lincoln Center every June, but our upcoming performance will be at the New York City Center December 4th through January 5th. And a wonderful thing about that, the summer's over, but the campers get to come together and have a reunion.
So
and
you
see
have
an Ailey performance.
you have that reunion that, let me say, that's at City Center, December 4th to January 5th.
Yes,
It's a
the
long
company
way
will
off,
be-
but jot it down, okay? All right.
We're going to be lighting up New York.
But, you know, it's really wonderful to talk to people about positive things they're doing for today's youth. And this is a positive program that you're involved in. And it's been going on. And many of them go on to the Ailey School, which is now in its 50th year.
We give scholarships to select students that show talent. We have one of our former Ailey campers from the Chicago camp. We have 10 camps around the country. Solomon Dumas joined the Ailey company in 2016, so he's the first camper who went on to have a professional career with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. So it is possible.
That's wonderful. So what message you do deliver to the other kids your age?
Just be yourself. Don't follow others. If you like to dance, come to Ailey Camp. You'll learn new talents, and you'll just have fun and just be a kid, because being an adult, it's a lot.
Jada, out of the mouths of babes, thank you so much. And thank you and congratulations for what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for our broadcast for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.